Hello, Washington football fans, and welcome to a post-game instant reaction episode of the Washington Wrap. Remember, this is a 10-minute single-issue format show. Obviously, on today's episode, all we're talking about is the Washington football team losing their Week 1 opening matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers 20-16. And let's not waste any time. Let's start the clock and bring in our co-host today, Felix Trammell, who is at FedEx Field in the press box right now. And let's start the clock, 10 minutes on the clock. Felix Trammell, Washington lost their starting quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick to injury early in this game, and at that point, we probably knew how this was going to go. The fact that they were in it for so long and remained so competitive was a bit of a surprise, but how much of a concern, let's start with the quarterback injury, is this for the rest of the season?
The rest of the season, maybe. Actually, short term is not bad. In this game, Taylor Heinicke was needed a little bit more than Ryan Fitzpatrick because of his mobility. And the offensive line had trouble blocking the Chargers' defensive front. Bosa and those guys were causing havoc. So Heinicke was able to move his feet and move around and make plays. So Heinicke on the short term was good. Now there's going to be some film on him going into Thursday, which would make a little bit of cause for concern. If this first couple of throws you saw, they were overthrows. That was his issue all training camp. He was overthrowing receivers. But see, when he settled in, he's a gamer. He makes plays in the game. He has a feel for the game. So I don't think that's too much of an issue short term, depending on how long term the injury is to Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, and look, I think you touched on a real big point of difference there. Both teams today were utilizing, quick dropbacks, quick throws because they didn't want to stand in the pocket against each opposition's pass rush. We were not giving Joey Bosa much time. They were not giving Chase Young much time. But the difference seemed to be that Justin Herbert was moving the ball with ease on those quick dropbacks and quick throws, whereas we were struggling. Justin Herbert looked amazing today, by the way. Like, just a hell of a game from the second-year quarterback out of Los Angeles. But we went into this game expecting our defensive line to be the absolute cream of the crop, the best in the NFL potentially. And they had a pretty bad day in terms of not being able to get to the quarterback, not really disrupting the running game either. From what you saw there at FedEx Field, what happened? Was it individual efforts from the players, or was it more of a coaching scheme failure?
I think it was more scheme. You have to give the Chargers credit. They have some good tackles. Even though Brian Bulaga went out, he's a solid tackle. He's been a tackle for Aaron Rodgers for years. And Christian Slater may be top 3 offensive tackle in the league. So let's give them some credit there. However, Montez Sweat had a good game. And it doesn't necessarily show with sacks, but he interrupted the run game very well. He blew up some screens. He was able to cause some trouble. And that's why the Chargers didn't put up the points they could have. The Chargers could easily have put up 35, 40 points today, and they only managed to get 20. So the line didn't dominate as much as they needed to, however, and they just didn't get Herbert on the ground. Herbert had a clean sheet for the most of the day. His jersey looked like he didn't play. So that's going to have to be modified, and there's going to have to be some schematic things given up or modified to give those guys the ability to attack the quarterback.
Yeah, Justin Herbert completed 31 of 47 today for 337 yards. Only the one touchdown, and he did throw an interception. William Jackson III picking him off in the red zone, which was a very big turnover for this defense. But I want to focus on the defense because that's where this game was won or lost today for Washington. That's where all the investment has been made. There were some crucial plays, third downs where Chase Young, Montez Sweat, even Jonathan Allen, these guys weren't on the field. We saw guys like James Smith-Williams and Tuhill on the field, which was interesting and really, that can only come down to coaching and scheme and your substitutions and your rotations and who's in for what sort of plays. But in week 1, this stuff should be the best it's going to be all season. The longer the season goes on, the further we get away from those intense coaching sessions we have in preseason, in training camp, in mini camp, etc. As the season goes on, you adjust, you simplify, you change what you need to do. But in week 1, that shouldn't be an issue. But we saw that a bit, and we heard Ron Rivera after the game say that there were guys missing assignments, there were incorrect plays called. This, for me, this all comes down to coaching, man. Like, this is the stuff that should be at its best in week 1, and for there to be issues in week 1 is really not a good sign from Jack Del Rio.
Yeah, part of it is they do a lot of rotating. So no matter if, what the situation is, if Chase or Montez have done 7 plays, they rotate them out. Their philosophy is they're going to keep fresh guys in there. So Smith Williams and Casey Toohill and Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle, all those guys played multiple snaps, but Chargers were doing long drives. So it would get to the 9th or 10th play, and then all of a sudden it's a big third down, and Chase Young's not on the field, or Sweat's not on the field, or Allen's not on the field. So it's more the rotational aspect. And in week 1, I get it to an extent, but also that causes missed assignments because you have so many moving parts. The linebackers rotated all game. There would be drives where it was McCain and Collins in the back. Then it would be Curl and Collins were switched. Curl and McCain were switching. Then there would be times when it was like Ioannidis would start off, and then Payne would come in with Settle. And it was just a lot of rotating parts. And a lot of rotating parts lends to missed assignments. And you'll see there be times where there's a guy wide open that probably wasn't coached to be open, but the players just missed assignments. So some of that's overcoaching, some of that's just over rotation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think overcoaching is a really good thing to bump on, because I do feel like that's probably what it was a little bit. We have such a rich amount of talent and depth on this defense. Everyone wants to, rotate through and have a chance to play. But at the same time, at the end of the day, just let your starters play as much as they can. Give them a break so you can keep them fresh and get the full game out of them. But don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple, because if you have too many moving parts, one breakdown can turn into a lot of breakdowns. And we saw that today. Like, we had several plays where we had 3 safety sets with Curl, McCain, and Collins all on the field, and yet somehow we still ended up with cornerbacks, isolated one-on-one. What's the point of having 3 safeties on the field if you can't spare like one to cover the outside and, provide that help over the top, especially when you got a guy like Benjamin St-Juste, who is a rookie and, didn't play terribly today, and, he was beat a couple of times, but a lot of those throws were just very good throws from Justin Herbert. But, if you're going to play a 3 safety set, use that as an advantage, not a disadvantage. There was a key 3rd and long conversion late in the game. We had a 3 safety set and the middle of the field was still open. How does that happen? There were a couple of head scratching moments today in terms of the play calls and the schemes used. So I want to switch to some of the positives. And even though it took him a while to get going in the game and he had a fumble late in the game, Antonio Gibson looked incendiary today. He looks like a stud running back. What did you see up close from him today?
I saw a burst out of him. I saw explosiveness. I saw he's learning how to read the holes and read his blocks, and when to press the hole, when to wait to let the play develop. He's turning into a running back, and you can see it. He was the team's best offensive player today. And the game plan was working, giving him the ball. He was wearing the Chargers down. And then, the game kind of slipped up at the end when there was a couple of drives at the end of both halves where the Chargers just held onto the ball. The end of the first half, they had a 7.5-minute drive. The end of the game, they had a 5-minute drive, and you didn't get the ball back. But Gibson was working up a lather, so to say. So Gibson played well because he's starting to think like a running back and not just as an athlete. And it shows in the play. He knows when to turn the burst on, when not to turn the burst on.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'll tell you what, though, even though he might have been the best player on the offense today, he didn't have the best play of the day. That Terry McLaurin catch on the sideline was a dime from Taylor Heinicke, by the way, but that catch was... I don't think we're going to see a better catch across the NFL this year. That was insane. As crazy as it looked, and, for people watching, everyone knew that was a highlight catch, but I don't think people understand just how technically and fundamentally difficult it is to track the ball while horizontal, falling down backwards with a defender on top of you, to still track the ball and bring it in cleanly. That is insane. And Terry McLaurin, by far the player of the day today.
Yeah, that was actually in the press booth. I thought the defender caught it. And my reaction, people's reaction behind me, were like, well, that's incomplete because the defender went out of bounds. He never got anything down because we saw the back judge spot the ball. And then we were like, hold up, Terry got up with the ball. It was insane because I had already saw the hold on the play because they beat him with a double move.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, it's a free play, throw it up there. But it was tough. And for those questions of is Terry McLaurin a number one receiver? Number one receivers makes plays like that. Mm-hmm. And that's what number one receivers do. So when given the opportunity, he makes those plays.
Yeah. That was one hell of a play. Look, 30 seconds left before we wrap this up. 10 minutes for a post-game wrap-up is always a tight time frame. 4 days until our next game. What's the biggest challenge for Washington heading into Thursday Night Football against the New York Giants?
Got to shore up the offensive line. It got to shore up in pass protection. If the team can pass block, they have the ability to run the ball, they can possess the ball, which will keep the defense off the field. The defense was on the field for 36 minutes today. That's not a winning formula. So we got to possess the ball longer to give the defense more of a break. And if they can do that, they can beat the Giants.
Look, no jinx. I don't want to see myself on Freezing Cold Takes Twitter, but Daniel Jones is not Justin Herbert, so it'll be interesting to see how we go on Thursday night. Felix Trammell coming at us live from the press box at FedEx Field there. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find Felix on Twitter at HETR and Blessed. You can find me on Twitter at ChadwicoTWW. And more importantly, you can find the Washington Wrap everywhere. Just by searching for the Washington Wrap, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, find all our podcasts everywhere that you get podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. Leave us comments, leave us ratings, leave us reviews, like and subscribe where you can. Felix, always a pleasure talking Washington football with you, even after a loss. We'll see you later in this week, I'm sure, for another episode previewing Thursday Night Football.